Right, this video's in a in a response to a request for help by Telzan35 on BlenderArtists. He's doing some sort of sewer stroke pipe thing and is having a few issues. So I'm just going to do this here. I'm going to be going briefly over some of the modelling keys, like I do in my modelling keys videos on my YouTube channel. I'm using 2.75 because my 277 is basically tweaked. I use a lot of pie menus, as you can see. I use the official ones, but I also use Wazoo's pie menus, which I find extremely useful. So if you get into pie menus, I'd recommend them. You can find them on BlenderArtists. But as a result, if I do a Shift S here, then I get all of these options, whereas a Shift S here, it's just a basic thing. So, and also some of my hotkeys are set up differently. And so I'll avoid using 277 just in case you're not using something other than the default blender, and that this is why I keep 275 on the machine. So anyway, enough waffle. Let's start. I will add a mesh. Now I'll be using hotkeys, but again, you can practically everything is available. Just simply going over here, and the beauty of these as well is they also tell you the hotkey. So once you've sort of gone, oh, I want to go into orthographic mode, or toggle orthographic mode and perspective, then you quickly get used to them, and they are ones I'd recommend. Your numpad 7, numpad 1, numpad 3. Let me just Shift A to add, and I'll just add a cylinder. 8 sides I've set it to. So, and I can go into edit mode. If you're using the standard blender, just tab will take you into edit mode and tab out. Again, if you're using pie menus, you probably use Shift Tab and have multiple options, but again, you can get to them here. Just go into edit mode. So 7 for the top, 1 for front, 3 for right. You do Control 7 bottom, Control 1 back, Control 3 left, and you just, so basically you've got your corner keys. That makes life a lot quicker. And then I've got a 3-button mouse, so I click and hold the middle. That allows me to rotate, and then if I'm doing something in this sort of angle, I can then just hit 1, 3 or 7 to get back to just one edge. Another thing to do is to switch in between wireframe and solid depending on what I'm doing. If I want to be able to access all the points, I'll drop into wireframe while I'm doing it. So again, if you're using the standard blender, Z will do that, or you can just wireframe solid. Yeah, so until you get used to the hotkeys, again shortcut Z. Until you get used to the hotkeys, you can always use the menus. If you're not sure of something, if you're looking for something in the menus and you don't know, say you're doing something and you don't know if it's off the edges, faces or vertices menu, and like for example if I want to do a loop cut, I can sit here and try and read through and look for a loop cut, and it's not in loop cut, so then I would say, well, where else could it be? Transform, it must be somewhere. And it's actually in here on the side menu. To be honest, I never look there for loop cut, simply because As you can see there, it's got a shortcut of Control R, and that is one shortcut I pretty much have burned into my head because I use it so often. That Control B for bevel and E for extrude, and you really, that does pretty much an awful lot of my modelling. So anyhow, so R for rotate. Again, that's a keystroke I recommend you learn, because doing the transform by clicking on there, you don't really have control of what your mouse is doing when you start it. So if I click on R there, it's based on where my thing was in relation to the menu. Whereas if I go here and press R, you see I get a little indicator of what's going on. Closer I get to the middle, the faster it does. There I can get much more control. If I hold Shift down, I can get even more control. And what? So the same goes for scale as well. So if I scale and I'm here, but if I scale and I'm here, so it's handy to know your scale, your G for your move, and your R, because it allows you to do things like get your cursor there, do R, and then you've got a better idea of where you're rotating at. But you can also put it in manually, R90 to rotate 90 degrees. Scaling, you can scale. If I then scale X, it only scales on the X axis. If I scale Shift X, it scales on everything but the X axis. Very handy to have. So again, that's another thing. It's the same goes for move. If I GX, move on the X. If I G Shift X, move on everything but the X. So they are handy to know. Again, say GX. And without changing, I can do Shift X, I can do Y, I can do Z, and I hit Escape. And of course the other good one to remember is Control Z to undo whatever you last did. So anyway, there's my so-called pipe. I'll just scale X a bit, drag it out, I'll select the face mode, click that, Shift click that other one, press delete key, or again go to mesh, go to delete, choose faces. So I now have a pipe as such. I'll say Control R for a loop cut. So Control R, and then I just hit return twice because that's more or less what I want. You can then click on the arrow of the manipulator if it's active to move, or if you're having trouble selecting things because of the manipulator, then just GX and we move that up. And then I can hold down Alt and click on that edge, and that selects the Alt thing, or I can click on that edge, select edge loop. So like you see there, I can click that, select edge loop, or I can just Alt click, which is again a very Alt click selects that, Alt click that. Very handy. So say there are a few keystrokes that you can learn, but you can get by without them. The only ones you really have to lock in your head really are the R, S and G, because they just work better in the viewport, rather than trying to access them via the menu. So anyway, we've got this. Now if I'm going to create, I'm just going to GX on that to push it out. So Alt click that to select the whole thing. Now I want to split that so I can create a pipe. The first thing I'm going to do is Shift S, and I'm going to move the cursor to the selected, because I'm going to be using that as my point when I do a shear in a minute. So we've got that. Everything's fine. Right, what we want to do now is create the thing. So I'll go into top view, press numpad dot to zoom into there, then I'll just scroll out a bit with my middle mouse button. Right, what I want to do now is I want to go into wireframe, want to press the B for box, and using my middle mouse button rather than the left mouse button, draw a box like that, and that's deselected those edges. Now I want to rip those vertices, so I'll go mesh, vertices, and rip, or just V. So do that, and if I move now you can see they're disconnected. That's fine, so just hit escape, leaving them selected. Change my bounding, my pivot point to my cursor, then I'm going to go mesh, transform, shear. That's a bit of an awkward one to remember, Shift Control Alt S. But what that does now, if I move my mouse button left and right, it's doing that. So I want to go that way, and at the moment you can see it's shear 0.5, 0.6. I'll just put 1 in and hit return. Now I'm going to press select, circle select. Holding the middle mouse button, I'm going to take those off. Holding the left mouse button, select them. Middle mouse button, deselect them. Right mouse button. That now is, if nothing is selected, A to deselect everything there. I can hold Control, right mouse button, go around there, and that's another way of doing it. If nothing's selected, I can also press B. So you've got multiple ways of selecting, just you can bounce between them. You find sometimes one is better than the other. Right, so now I want to do another shear. So I go mesh, transform, shear. This time I want to do -1. Right. Now I'm going to do B. I'm going to select all that. I'm going to go to mesh, vertices, remove doubles, just to make sure that now any points that were disconnected that shouldn't be are reconnected. Go back into solid mode, and there we are. Then I can just either manually click, shift click, shift click, shift click, select these edges like that, or I can alt click, and that now selects that whole thing. Now I want to extrude that, so mesh, so here we go, extrude region. Now I actually want to extrude it on the Y, so I can just hit Y now, and that will extrude it on the Y. And then I actually want to flatten that off, so I'll do scale Y, so that's SY0. Now the reason it jumped all the way back there is because I've still got that set to there. So if I undo that, change that to medium point, now do SY0, you can see it basically just tidied. I could have done that and just pushed it out. So I'll say for example, I did that, I do scale Y0, and then just GY. Whichever one you want to do, it results exactly the same when you're finished. So GY, so here we are, start of the system. And the same thing is you can then say you want to spin. So I'll go into the top view. I will position my cursor sort of level with that about there. And I'll do an alt click on one of those edges to select the whole loop and spin. Now that's gone the wrong way. So do a Control Z, and instead of looking at the top, do Control 7 for the bottom. Now spin. And you can see that, now go back to the top again, now it's gone the right way. So E to extrude, hit return, GY, so again, I can right mouse button to position the cursor there, alt click to select that, try a spin, doesn't work. So now you can either go the other way around, or the easiest way is you can change that to -90. So it's the same as going into the other view and doing 90. So it's entirely up to you. Again, 2 ways to skin a cat there. You can choose either -90, 90 if it's inverted, or you can just invert your view. So, right, E to extrude, X, take that along, Alt click, GY, drag that along, down, I'll put that. And another thing you can do as well is if you want to sort of directly position the cursor, if I do a GX now, like that, say, then I do Shift S and set the cursor to selected, then do Control Z a couple of times. That puts me back there, so the spin will give a bigger arc. So I hit spin now and getting a much wider arc, but based off where I set this to previously. You know. So again, now if I do a GY, say to there, I do Shift S cursor to selected, Control Z twice, I do spin, change that to 90, and you see where it's going to, and again, E to extrude on the Y, select that, GX, select that, GX about there, Shift S, cursor to selected, Control Z, Z twice, spin, -90, EX, Alt click, GX. Right, now I'm going to add in some things here. So we're going to have one going off this way, so I'll do a Control R there. That's one loop point. I'm going to do a Control R here. That's another loop point, and a Control R there. Another loop point. I'm going to change my snap to vertex, and I'm going to GX. Now notice I haven't actually activated the snap. This is the way I prefer to work. Rather than activating it, I'll just GX, then hold the control, and it will snap based on where I place it, and then just click. Right, now basically I'm going to open up these to be more things. So I'm going to go into wireframe mode, and with this one I'm just going to be middle drag to select that. Oh, I'll do a Control Z. Now that's a handy thing with the Blender Control Z. It also takes account of when you're selecting stuff. So I want to position my cursor there before I do anything else. And if I press the full stop on the numpad, it zooms in there. Or alternatively, of course, you can just Shift, click the middle mouse button, move it round, and Control middle mouse button to zoom in. So B, I'll Shift middle mouse button, again V, that's basically ripped them. So there you go, press escape, and then we're going to shear. So mesh transform shear, so that's -1, return, and do it 80 to deselect everything. B, left mouse button, select those two, and shear. This time I'm going to use Shift Alt Control S, and then 1, return. B, Control V to pull up vertices, and choose remove doubles, which is D. You see the highlighted D there, that's D. So now we'll do the same on this one. Do A to deselect everything, B, select that, Shift S, cursor to selected, B, middle, deselect them, V to rip, escape, Control Shift Alt S, 1, return, A to deselect, B, Control Alt Shift S, -1, not -1, Control Alt Shift S, yep, -1, there we go. Right, B, select everything, Control V, D. So, right, so now deselect everything. You can select them, Shift select them, so B, Shift select. Sorry, actually B, you don't need to Shift select, just B will select both. Now I can go here, edges, bridge edge loops. As you can see, that's connected them two up. Now they're not exactly level. An easy way to fix this, I'll go into point mode, B, middle mouse to deselect, B, left mouse to select, and I'll GX. I've got that wrong somehow. In which case I'll just GX and manually move until it looks about right to me. Shift to slow it down, that'll do. It's close enough. And then go into solid view. So there's a connecting pipe. Right, we want this one now. So again, wireframe, alt click to select that. I've got a B, no, Shift S, cursor to selected, B, middle mouse button, V, escape. And I want to shear, mesh transform shear. Oh, nothing's happening. Why? Well, because you're going this way now, not that way. So simply press the Y key and move up and down instead of left and right. So again, they were talking 1 for that direction, return, zoom in a bit, and you'll see middle mouse button out, then left mouse button in, right mouse button, and then again do shear, so Control Shift Alt S. You see how the arrows are pointing left and right at the moment, and you press Y, they point up and down. So -1. B, select everything, Control V, D, 2 vertices removed. Alright, edge loop, Alt, click that edge, E, escape, GX, change pivot point to median, scale XO. So there we are. So they're all your joints, basically. So there's your, basically that's your sewer. Now, if you want to add pipes at an angle, then again 1, do an E, hit return, just G, move that along, G, E, X, there you go. So that one's basically going down as if it had stairs, right? And now we want a pipe going the other way. Now what I'd be inclined to do there personally is I would alt click to select them, mesh, duplicate, press escape, GX, R90. Then do a Control R, put a loop cut in there, hit return, GY, and that should now be on a level with that because I was using Control. So I was GY moving it up and down, held Control and focused on that. Now what you want to watch for is when you're moving that, depends where you are to start with. So if I do GY there, that's there. If I do GY now, you see, even though I'm going, it's not honouring it because my cursor wasn't over there. So again, do the same thing. Go into wireframe mode. B, middle. Oh no, Shift S, cursor to selected. B, middle. That's it. V to rip. Shear. Y. Oh, change the to the shear. Y. -1. Shear Y1. Select everything with B. Control VD. Alt click that. Alt click that. Mesh. Edges. Bridge edge loops. And there you are. So that's how you can do that. Now say you want this to be flat in the middle. What I did, let's see if it works. If I do Control 7, because I know I want to work in the underneath, I will Alt click that line, Shift Alt click that, Shift Alt click that, Shift Alt click that. Then I'll hold down Shift and manually click these here. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to get rid of them but not delete them. What I'm actually going to do is dissolve edges. The shortcut key for that, by the way, is Control X. That's really handy to have. Then what I'm going to do is go into face mode, hold Alt, click on that, Shift Alt, click on that, Shift Alt, click on that, Shift Alt, click on that, and then again Shift click these. Then what I'm going to do is press the I key for inset, just a little, like that. Then I'm going to press the E key and hit return, GZ, move it down a tad. Right. Now I'm just going to do a little bit of mesh cleanup. So what I'm going to do here is just go into medium point, go into point mode, select those 2 points and press J to join. Select those two, press J to join. Those two, J to join. Those two, J to join. Just go around, make sure I've done all of those. The reason for it will become apparent. Those two, J to join. Yeah, okay, I've done them. Okay. Right. Face mode. We'll select them. delete the key, faces only, and I'm going to do the same over here for these. Select that and that, delete faces. And if you're moving around like that, just select a face, press the dot, and it'll start to rotate around that if you've got rotate round selection set in your user preferences. Okay, we're in medium point, going to edge, alt click, checking on that, I'm going to say scale Y0, check on that, alt click, scale Y0. So all of these are going to be scale. So alt click, shift alt click, shift alt click. Change that to individual origins, scale X0. Now if I hadn't have done individual origins there, they all would have lined up. So if I undo that, and I change that from individual origins to medium point and scale X0, as you can see they all line up then. If I change it to individual origins, then they are tidied up, but they keep the same offset. Like that. So, there you are, there's a thing. One other thing, Control 7. One other thing I would do here personally is Shift click, click, Shift click. And then I would actually hold Alt down, press M, and merge it last. But again, click, Shift click, mesh, vertices, merge at last. Again, Alt M is a good shortcut to get familiar with. Click, Shift click, Alt M at last. Alt M at last. Click, Shift click, Alt M at last. Now the reason I've done that is it's tidier with your geometry. That's all. If I go into object mode now, you can see you basically got your whole sort of sewer system. If I put on smooth, like that, and what I also tend to do in things like this, I'll go to my object data, click auto smooth and set that to 60. Just looks neater. Now if you want this to, if you've done that and you suddenly decide actually, you know what, that's fine, but I really wanted that to bend. This is where bevel's handy. Alt click, Control B for bevel, drag it out, and you say, well, it's still slanted. Yeah, but increase the number of segments and you get a nice curve. I use this a lot again, Control B, and you get a much gentler curve. So you can sort of block out your design first and then add in smoothness afterwards if you want. Right, so that's that. Now let's say you want to add a room at the end of one of these. So let's say this here, we want it to be a room. Right. So how'd you go about that? Well, what I would personally do is I would likely either actually build a room and then join up the geometry, or, so let's see, we come in here and I'll do E for extrude, escape, and I will scale on the x-axis. Like that, and I shall GY, move it a bit. For now, I will be snapping it back. The reason I'm moving it is I want that, select those two, or just select the edge, to Shift S and put cursor to selected, Alt click, change that to 3D cursor, scale Z, like that. Actually, what I could have done if I go through all of that to start with is I can click on that edge, Shift S, cursor to selected, do that, make sure it's 3D cursor, E to extrude, escape, scale X, scale Z, like that, GY, just a tiny bit, not a massive amount, like that. Now, then, GZ, control, that's not right, oh, GZ, there you go, GY, oh, GX. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm easing it out, so GX, that's not the one I want, that's the one I want, I think, GX, yeah, GZ, control, so right, I'm going to turn this back to medium point, do a shift click these, and scale X0, shift click them, scale X0, shift click them, scale Z0, so there's your room if you like. Now I'll do a bit of tidy it up, click, shift click, alt merge it last, click, shift click, alt merge it last, and now I'll alt click to select that, escape, GY, right, now I'll just select them, scale X, GZ, GY, and that's if you want it to come directly off like that. That's a lot of work though. There's an easier way, and that is to fake that bit. So basically we select that, I'm gonna put the cursor to the selected, gonna add a cube, I'm gonna scale that up a little bit, GZ, move it slightly above the door floor, GZ, control click on a floor point so it's there. Alright, GY, move it out a bit. And then what we can do is we can then fake the entrance by just, if we just scale X, GY, GZ, so there's your room, say. Do a Control R, put a loop there, Control R, drag down, put a loop about yay. Alt click that, do a Control B, and I can create basically the doorway like that. So if I say I want it that big, Alt click that, GZ, move that down. I'll go into wireframe mode so I can see more what I'm playing with. And say okay, I'm happy with that. So I'll put Z to go back into there, and then I can just delete the door, delete that face. I'll delete these faces now so we can see inside it for now. So there you are, and yeah, I know it doesn't line up, but what you can do here is you Control R, E, F, like that. So now we've got a loop. Now we're going to face mode. Select that loop, shift click them to deselect them. Go E escape, scale shift Y. And what that will look like from inside the tube, if we just select L and hide them, is you've now got this here. So we can just select that, turn the manipulator on, so just GX, just so I know which, shift GX, and I'm just control clicking on those points so it lines up. And you can basically build an artificial entrance. So if I could select those like that, and I do E escape and push that back, I can start working on just that. And I'll do a Control plus and hide that. I'll go into wireframe mode. And I'm doing this on the fly, so it isn't exactly elegant. I'll probably put a bit more effort into this. Unhide that. Go into face mode. Hide it. Unhide everything. Shift H to hide everything but that. And the Z to go back into solid view. I can hide them now. And now I can just focus on doing this. And so the easiest way around that is just to decide how you want to join everything up. So again, an easy way would be take that, just that, just drag it in on the Y ever so slightly so it intersects a tiny bit. Select that, that, E escape, scale X, scale Z, and just select that one and just move it up. And if I unhide everything, where's my room gone? Here's my room. Then, as far as you can see, it looks like one solid mesh. And there's no reason why it has to be one solid mesh. It's much easier doing it this way. I mean, you can do it the other way. It just, there's a bit more donkey work in terms of geometry, so you can control your geometry a bit better. And also realistically, I suppose you would have some sort of joint where the doors met the pipe, as it were. So what we can do is we can go into wireframe mode and come out of, go into object mode, and I'm just going to select the camera. I'm going to Shift S, selection to cursor, just quickly of getting the camera there, so just G, and I'm going to put the camera in there, so 1, 3, G, 7, R, 3, R, then O to go into camera view, solid, so there's your entrance into your door. So there's all of that, so O to come out of camera view. What I'll probably do actually is if I select that, go into edit mode, and I want to put, if I select that one point, cursor to selected, I'm going to shift add, and I'm going to add, oh, I need to come out of edit mode first, go into object mode, shift add a lamp, and let's add a spot. Just take it, go into wireframe, zoom in, and take it down a smidge so it's in the room. 3. Just drag that along to there. Do a Shift D, escape. Shift D, escape. Go into camera view. Have a quick look at the rendered view. Like that. There's your spots. So oh, they all need, move them to layer 2 and actually move them to layer 2 as well. Oh, excuse me. That's better so I can see what I'm playing with. Okay. Right. We need an alternative actually, is if I go select this. I'm going to go into solid mode. I'm going to edit mode with tab. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select those two faces. And I'm going to Shift D, press escape, P, and say separate by selection. Then select that new object. Go into wireframe mode. And I'm going to scale Z, 0. GZ. There. I'm going to scale X. On the medium point. Oh, I need to object transform. I need to origin to geometry. There we go. That's why it was misbehaving. The origin was because I'd extracted it from this whole mesh. It was taking its origin as the mesh for the whole mesh. So okay, scale X. Scale Z. You move it down. That looks about right. And I'm going to make that an emissive object. So, first of all, give it a texture. Ah, I'm in Blender renderer. I thought need to be cycles. Delete that. Thought something didn't look right there. Right, ray visibility. Don't want it seen by the camera. So the material, and I want that to be emissive. So if I go into the camera view, actually 7, go into the top view, select the camera, rotate on the Z. Let's have a quick rendered view. Right, okay, let's speed this up by putting the border on. Now if I do a Control B and draw a box, oops, actually I'll turn that off for rendered. Do Control B, draw a box, then click crop, then turn that back to rendered. It'll render even quicker. Alright, So let's crank that up a bit, give it a bit of a bluey hue. Right, now let's see if we can't tidy up some of this. So light paths, just take that down to about 4. Turn them off. Set that, I don't know, to 0.8. And diffuse 4, do things 4, yeah. Performance. Lamp. Settings, multiple importance, world, settings, how many samples? Okay, I'll change that to GPU, it's going to be quicker. And what samples are we playing with here? Wood samples. Sampling. Let's whack that up to 32. If we set that to 0 and let it run off a bit. So right, set the preview to 64 then, rendered to 250. So you can see that I'm using a mesh for the light there, it's not too bad. And go into wireframe, select the camera, RZ, camera view, rendered mode. Now you see I'm getting light cast from the emission shader as well as those spots. So I could take that spot and go to the light. We make that 90. I'm going to see what happens if I just set these to 90. I'm just playing. Drop the down sizes down to 1. You see it's reducing the actual colour. But you notice how as soon as you start reducing the light, you start to get more noise. So we say 0.5 for them. So those spots, that's the level of noise with spots. And that's the level of noise with actual light emitting geometry. And another advantage of light emitting geometry, of course, is you can get to play with it. So if I go into wireframe mode, I go into edit mode, things, B, I'll scale Y0. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a few loop cuts to this, like that. Hit return, then Control B on those loop cuts, like that. Go to face mode, delete faces. Go back into object mode. Now I look at the camera now. I'll just look at the side view, take them up a bit to there, camera view, and I go into rendered, and you can see you're getting a different look entirely for your lights. So let's take that one stage further. Go to wireframe and do Shift D escape, R90, G, put them there. And then I can go into rendered mode. Now I do GX, take them out, bring them in. And because they're invisible to the camera, you can just use them. So I can do that. I can select that one, GZ, like that. And I can then do a Shift D escape, RY, G Shift Y, so I'm only moving it on the G and the X. On the Z and the X rather. Let's just go into wireframe mode and see what I'm up to there. It's too far, okay. Go back into rendered mode. GX. So you get the idea anyway. So I did sort of get sidetracked and go on a bit further than I intended there, but that gives you an idea with all of them anyway. I'll come out of that, go into another one. The other thing was you were on about adding a curve. So we'll go cursor to center, and we'll simply add a Bezier curve. 7 for top view, zoom in, go into edit mode. I'm going to select that point, E to extrude, move it, V to choose the vector type, do it. Just play with them, vector, automatic, E to extrude, E to extrude, alright, so there's your curve. Right, so we want to fill that, so change that to full from half, then just increase your bevel depth like that. That gives you your square. Increase your resolution, that turns it into a circle. So then I can select that, I can move it along, the curve moves with it, like that. So if I go into 1, then do E to extrude, I can do R to rotate it, E to extrude, I can just do X so it locks on the X axis, top view, E to extrude, R, like that, E to extrude Y, and so there's that, and you can move those to reposition it, or you can reposition it that way, E to extrude X, be and then you say, well, you actually want to make one of those bigger, so Alt and S for fatten or shrink, and that will affect just that one. If you've got two selected, Alt S will fatten that section. So that's like the pipe going into a bigger place, for example. And likewise down there, shift select them, Alt S, and there you are. And again, knock the resolution up another notch if you wish. Increase the, if you change that into wireframe, you can see the effect that these have. They're not really having much of a thing, but that controls basically how smooth that is, and that controls basically the rings. So, I mean, you can get away with just having, say, a resolution of 2 there, and dropping that resolution down to, say, 2 or 3. And the reason being that you can go into object mode, and you now want to actually work with that geometry, and you go Object, Convert to Mesh. Again, Alt C is a quick way of pulling that up, but Object, Convert to Mesh. Right, you no longer have a Bezier curve. It's called a curve, but it isn't. It's now just a mesh. So if I call curve mesh, and now I go into that, and I've got all my geometry. And what I can do is I can add a subdivision surface to that, whack that up to 2, go into object mode, and you see that looks very pretty. And you can just disable that while you're working, or take it down to 0 in the view. If you render it, it'll still show pretty, but while you're editing it, it'll just show it as the basic mesh. So I can now go into this, and I can work on it just the way I would anything else. So I select that. There you go. So that's a way of dealing with a curve. And if you want to, like I say, if you want to place lights really easily, you can do it that way. If you want a flat roof, then you can just do like I did previously, which is you can just select that, do an Alt click, and you can do a Control X, and you've now got a flat roof like that. And the beauty of that is, say you wanted your lights to be equidistant along there, you can Alt click there to select all of those, do a Shift D, Escape, P, Selection. So if I click that and hide, then I edit this one, don't need those. What I can do is select everything, insert, press I again, like that, hide them, A to select everything, delete them, Alt H to unhide. Now what I'll do there is I'll do mesh, normals, recalculate, just to make sure everything's facing it is. I'm going to give them a new material, make it emission, give it a nice warm glow, say 2. Right. unhide everything. Also go into Object Mode, unhide everything. Make sure my Bezier Curve Mesh 2 is selected. Knock it down a smidge so it's in, and that's basically giving me a line. And if I want to place the camera somewhere, what you can do is select that, edit mode, do that, do a Shift S, cursor to selected. Actually, we're probably better doing the Shift S, cursor to selected. Come out of edit mode. I'm gonna take the camera, move that into the same layer as that. So take the camera, make it visible layers so I can know what I'm dealing with. Go into wireframe mode. Where's the camera? Camera. Ah. Yeah, of course. Do a Shift S and choose Selection to Cursor. Zoom in on that. Do a 7. Rotate. 1. Take it down. Camera view. 7. Take that back to about the camera view. Solid. There we go. Now if I render that, you can see that we can sort of knock that down to say 1 and hide it from the camera, and there you go. Let's give that a surface, shall we? Right, and I'll tell you what, just for fun, let's go into edit mode. I'll click that. I'll click that, which is technically our floor. In fact, let's get rid of that. Let's get rid of that one so we've got a floor as well. That, do Control X, boom, now we've got a floor. Let's select that, face, dump. Let's add another material, assign that to that, like that. Go back into the object mode, rendered. Out we go. So that's getting there. So I'll tell you what, let's just have another quick play. Go into edit mode. Go into edge mode, deselect everything. I'm going to select these. I'm going to do a Control B, like that. Face mode, deselect them. E to extrude. Make sure that's individual origins, Alt S. So scale them in. Actually just scale. And then push them down a bit, like that. Go into solid mode. Go into object mode. Now let's see how that looks. Okay, one other quick change. is go into edit mode. They're selected, so select boundary loop, mesh, edges, mark sharp, and I'm going to alt click these edges here. I'm going to mark them sharp, Control E. Oh, no, didn't want to do that. Control E, mark sharp. Alt click, shift alt click, shift alt click, shift alt click, Control E, mark sharp. Oh, rendered. There we are. Let's bump that up a little. Here we go. That again, auto smooth 60 degrees. That's better. So there we are. Did tend to waffle on, I do apologise for that. I do have a habit of it. But I hope all of this gave